Here at MarkRogersTV, we love the discussion, the debate, the interaction. We crave it, we want it, we're asking that of you. And Mike the Asian Man stepped up in commenting to our Ohio State spring football video that he wanted to hear about Wisconsin spring football. So Mike the Asian Man, here you go. Gary Andersen's in place as the new coach at Wisconsin. Of course, big changes for the three-time defending Big Ten champions, 3 consecutive Rose Bowl trips, as Bret Bielema, just a couple days after hoisting the Big Ten championship trophy after the demolition of Nebraska in Indianapolis, bolts for Arkansas. The Wisconsin guy that we thought would never leave Madison, a Big Ten guy through and through his entire life, goes to the SEC. But we believe Wisconsin made a nice choice in replacing Bielema with Gary Andersen. Andersen took over a Utah State program that was one of the worst in FBS by far. Could barely win a couple games per year. Gary Andersen's last year at Utah State, 11-2 in a bowl victory. Now he goes to the big time in the Big Ten at Wisconsin. Couple things Gary Andersen's doing right. Right out of the gate, he's engaging the football players. He's winning them over. They're all commenting that this guy cares. He's engaged. He's a player's coach in a good way. He's personally talked to each Wisconsin football player. That's over 100 guys Gary Andersen has sat down and had a face-to-face conversation with already, just early in the spring. Now on the field, Gary Andersen's going to make his mark in 2 ways. He says on offense, we're going to throw and we're going to catch more than we have in the past here at Wisconsin. And on defense, I expect my defensive backs, my corners, to play man-to-man. We're going to put them on an island. We're going to challenge them to make plays so we can do other things on defense like rush the passer. So man-to-man defense at corner. And now let's talk about throwing the football on offense. Because, of course, Wisconsin doesn't do that real well. They have in the past because of the play action and because of the great ground game, but they've never been prolific in the passing game. Of course, about as close as they've gotten is just a couple of years ago in 2011 when a guy by the name of Russell Wilson checked in from NC State for 1 season and lit it up there in Madison. So what we've got at wide receiver is Abbrederis, who's not a true number 1 threat, but at Wisconsin, he's definitely the number 1 guy. Very dependable, great hands, not great speed for Abbrederis, but he needs help. And Wisconsin really needs a number 2 guy, and that could be Kenzel Doe. Just 5'8", but he's extremely quick. Caught 16 for 121 last season. Or sophomore Reggie Love, who barely has seen the field, but they say he is physically the most imposing, impressive wideout candidate in Wisconsin for the Badgers this season. So Reggie Love, Kenzel Doe, remember those names in the number 2 position behind Abbrederis, because this Wisconsin wide receiver core, they caught for 1,200 yards last season and 7 touchdowns. That's the entire group of wide receivers, and think about how many wide receivers around college football catch more than 7 touchdowns. But for Wisconsin, 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns from all the wide receivers. So look out for Kenzel Doe and Reggie Love. Now let's turn our attention to the quarterback position, which will probably be a 3-man battle, but could be 5 because Gary Andersen's brought in a couple of young guys that he really likes. But let's start with a front runner, Stave, who took over for Danny O'Brien last season after a couple games and really played well. 5 touchdowns, 3 picks. Just as a freshman, went 4-1 before he broke his collarbone against Michigan State and was really starting to turn the offense over, get command of it, and make some plays. So Stave is the front runner. Despite being the most immobile of the 5 quarterbacks, Gary Andersen likes a mobile quarterback, so I don't know how that's going to work out. At number 2, you've got Danny O'Brien, the guy we just mentioned. He was the 2010 Rookie of the Year, the ACC at Maryland. He came into Wisconsin like Russell Wilson, but unlike Russell Wilson, after winning the job, he couldn't hang on to it. He had a good game to begin the season against Northern Iowa, and then things just fell apart, and he's going to have to get his head screwed on straight to battle for this job throughout the spring and summer. That's the case for Danny O'Brien. Then we look at Curt Phillips, who ended up having the job and playing the most meaningful minutes for Wisconsin, a 6th-year veteran. His story is that he was one of the top 15 quarterback recruits coming out of Tennessee, but never saw the field. He had 2 devastating knee injuries and which has obviously limited his mobility, but it's just impressive to see him out there playing, and was a really good story for him to take over as kind of the third string quarterback after those two devastating injuries, and with just, at that point, a few games possibly left in his collegiate career, to step on the field and lead game time drives against Ohio State and Penn State. So despite not being asked to do a whole lot, only 7 passes thrown in the Big Ten championship game and scoring 70 against Nebraska, Curt Phillips did leave clutch drives against Ohio State and Penn State, so he's in the mix as well through 5 touchdowns and 2 picks for Wisconsin. Now the 2 young guys. We've got Bart Houston. Bart Houston has the highest ceiling. He can really wing it. And then an interesting guy in Tanner McAvoy, who Gary Andersen recruited himself. It was his first quarterback recruit. So you got to think that there's an edge for McAvoy there. McAvoy was recruited by Oregon, Florida, and West Virginia. He's the most mobile, the fastest guy. So that's going to be interesting because that's what Andersen wants out of a quarterback. Not necessarily a run-first guy, but a guy that's very mobile, that can run it out of the spread and make some things happen on the edge. And that's what Tanner McAvoy brings to this offense. You get a new offensive coordinator out of San Diego State in Andy Ludwig, and the Badgers fire things up on August 31st with UMass in town. So Wisconsin, looking to win a 4th consecutive Big Ten championship, puts its program's hands in the hands of Gary Andersen. Wisconsin fans, talk to us. What do you have to say about your new football team, your new coach there at Madison and Wisconsin? Right here on Mark Rogers TV.